Haven't you learned by looking at me that men don't grow older? We just learn how to cover maturity better.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. We just learn how to hide the stupid long enough to get married. Welcome back to Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike.
Mike has got some more laws to talk to us about.
Yes. Hopefully this one follows the other episode, but I thought because I would follow up with another law episode, and I went down some weird rabbit holes and came out with something that was interesting to me, at least. And I wanted to specifically talk about alcohol laws and how some things aren't the way that they seem, we'll say.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So we're going to talk about 3 general ideas and premises in particular, but I'll get Adam's opinion, of course, and you guys that are listening can also listen in as well. But basically, first to start with, have you ever heard of alcohol bans in communities?
Alcohol bans in communities, like a community being dry?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Dry community.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Generally speaking, I would say that it is a bad thing. If the Prohibition era ever taught us anything, it's a bad thing.
What would be the thinking behind a particular county, let's say, or region, wanting to do it? Why would they want to?
If they decide to go dry, that it will reduce certain alcohol-related activity, whether it's drunk driving, whether it's domestic abuse, things like that. I think the thought process is that by getting rid of alcohol, it will reduce or eliminate those kinds of things from happening.
And what does happen?
They go up. They get worse. I mean, when you make, at least initially, when you make certain things illegal, it entices people to do them more. Okay. I think.
Well, let's pretend. No. I'll say this. I'll say, let's pretend that they were able to put in the law where somehow miraculously that the actual alcohol consumption in that particular neighborhood actually didn't go up. Would it still have the same problems?
And the consumption didn't go up.
The consumption did not go up. That's correct.
Okay, but there was still consumption?
Yeah, there's still consumption.
Well,
people are still using alcohol. I'm just saying, let's say the average person drank a liter a week. Okay. Sure. And now they drink 750 milliliters a week, for instance.
Okay.
Would the drunk driving and domestic violences go up, down, or stay the same?
I feel like I know what your answer is going to be. Is that they're going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
But the correlation... Again, I mean, I feel like the correlation still has something to do with the fact that it has been made illegal, even though these people are still partaking, right?
Yes. The reason why is that because if you ban the consumption of alcohol everywhere, you ban it from places where people can go to. So
right.
If you ban it from a bar, when you go to a bar, lots of people go to bars. They drink, they come home. By the time they get home, often by taxi cabs or other means, they get home, they fall asleep. If you force people to stay at home, they drink, domestic violence goes up.
Right.
Even if they're consuming less, they're still more likely to do something aggressive, because that's the nature of alcohol, at home because they have to. And the other reason why drunk driving goes up is because now these people don't have a place. If you tell them, okay, you can't drink here, they're going to go find some place to drink. Whereas before, let's say it was within walking distance, it's now driving distance. If it was before where everyone got into one car and went, now, because you don't want to get caught by the cops going to a place to get alcohol and to drink it, you're going to go in separate vehicles.
Right.
Well, separate vehicles means more people on the road to drive.
Well,
this happens routinely in countless counties.
There's a higher chance of increased incidents in that situation. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drunk driving is the one that's usually the number one reason why a county wants to go ban, and they almost always go up significantly as a result.
Oh yeah, well, because again, I mean, look at the Prohibition era, right? I mean, yeah, it's way back in the 1930s, but banning alcohol ends up being a terrible idea because what kinds of thing? Well, people still went out drinking, the organized crime element comes in, obviously, which means, okay, well, now you're giving an opportunity for criminals to make a profit off of other people's enjoyment, potential misery, potential criminal activity, but not getting caught for your own criminal activity in the process. There's so many things that can go, that we've seen in the past. We can look at historical information and say, look how bad it went then, or look what happened back then, and we decided to stop it because stopping it made it better.
Yeah. Oftentimes having a complete ban on something usually doesn't curb the behavior.
Right.
Just because you make something law doesn't mean that it all of a sudden makes it go away. Cough firearms.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be my default from now on.
Well, I mean, exactly.
Ban it. It's gone.
Done.
Magic. Boom, boom, boom. So the other thing I saw, and this is what actually triggered everything, changing my topic focus, was the promotion that I've seen online about how alcohol being used as a way to, alcohol intoxication, I should say, being used as a defense mechanism in a rape charge.
Right.
Which one of our MPPs, I believe Jill Andrews, is her name? The NDP for St. John's, was saying that this isn't right and that we should put a stop to it as soon as possible.
Right.
Did you hear about that?
I did. Now, my understanding of that one is it's complicated in that the articles that have come out about it have made a lot of the headlines in the for the articles have been that, oh well, intoxication is now a defense for people who have been charged with sexual assault, with sexual assault, rape, whatever. And it, I mean, from reading into it a little deeper, that's not exactly what was done there, because if you actually then read the articles, even if they have those headlines, you find out that the particular law that was struck down is called, it's something to do with like intoxication that leads to automatism. And so the cases in particular that were being fought that led to the law being struck down had to do with the use of psychedelic drugs and, essentially like, quote unquote, not having control of yourself when under the influence of something. Now, I can obviously see where that connects to the whole idea of intoxication and sexual assault and being able to use it as a defense for sexual assault. And trust me, I don't agree with that, but I don't know.
This is where the headlines are very, very misleading.
Yes.
Do you know what the definition of autonomism is?
I didn't look it up.
And that's what I had to find out.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the key. So that is intoxication by involuntary means.
Not only that, actually, and just looking it up too, like this from a website called Science Direct says, an automatism is an act committed during a state of unconsciousness or grossly impaired consciousness.
Yes. And the key thing about it is that it's involuntary. And that's the key part of it that a lot of people are missing. So it's not that you got drunk.
Right.
Allows you to get away with it. It's that you had no way of knowing that you got drunk, and that caused the issue. That's not the same thing. That's not even the same ballpark. Right. And this is where clearly this MPP is misleading it, because nothing on her thing says anything about that. Well, she's trying to say that it's going to be used as an excuse for somebody getting raped. I'm like, do you understand what they have to do? Do you understand the defense level that has to be put in process?
Yeah.
Not only that, and I want to make sure clear things. As a person who's never drank of any substantial of any kind, like I could list on my hand the 5 times I've touched alcohol with my lips in my entire life.
Right.
The amount of excuse I'm willing to tolerate for people that get drunk is very little. Mm-hmm. Like if you do something because you're drunk, I have no sympathy for you. Right. You decide to drink. But at the same point in time, I feel for the person that had, and this would happen to one of the band members of REM. He apparently had alcohol, took sleeping pills. Mm-hmm. The warning label didn't say that he couldn't mix the two. And that caused his level of intoxication. And that's why he did the assault that he did. Mm-hmm. Right? He wasn't trying to induce that. Right. It was involuntary. So if somebody roofies me and I do something that I normally wouldn't do because I've been roofied, why should I be at fault for that? That's a very good point. Why should I be at fault for that? Right, and that's what the law that was struck down is really talking about, right? Yes, those specific incidents. So in order for something like, and I can appreciate, and I don't want to diminish rape victims, and it's cruel and unfortunate that 1 in 3 females have experienced rape. And it's something that more people don't talk about and more people should. My point is that in order for a defense to prove this, 1, they have to prove that a person was intoxicated.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
2, they have to prove that they didn't know that they were being intoxicated. That's a little bit difficult. If you're taking shots, guess what? You know. You're volunteering it.
Yeah.
So unless, if I went over to his house and he started, flipping me alcohol throughout the night in my water, well, then that's a little different. But that'd be pretty hard for me not to notice alcohol. I can smell it pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because I never take it, right? So it's just like, oh, that's alcohol. I smell that. Smell that from a mile away. Yep. But that's the thing. And that's where the MPP trying to say, I mean, good for her for standing up, good for her for doing what she's doing, but you're terribly misleading this information. And the law is struck down. It wasn't a rape charge.
No, it wasn't. It was in both cases that they were talking about in this situation. So one was, it was like I think in both cases it was like the person attacked their parent.
Yeah.
Right. It was
it was like messed up.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre.
Like so they were stabbings and things. I think both of them were stabbings, right?
Yeah, there were assault charges. It was out of character behavior. And it was just one of those things where the math doesn't make sense. So could it happen in a rape charge? Yes, it could happen in a rape charge. But what is the likelihood? You have to prove that the person had all these things before it's to go through. It's just not going to happen, right? And defense lawyers know that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to all of a sudden say, well, this person consumed the alcohol and didn't know. Well, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it would take a lot for someone not to realize that they're drinking alcohol. I would
especially
think.
With alcohol.
Yeah,
especially with alcohol, because it's too easy to prove that they were.
Yeah,
right. Like far too easy.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a misnomer, and that's the kind of thing that I don't like to see because I got riled up about it when I first read it. I was fired up. I was like, what is Canada and Ontario coming to?
Well, and this is where I say as well that the headlines for the stories that were tied to this didn't help the situation because the headlines were purposefully inflammatory.
Yeah, they're not helping. This is why I hate the news because it doesn't tell the true story.
Right.
It doesn't say in this set of circumstances. Because when I went into it, I was like, okay, well, maybe they're talking about something, and I need to find out, which is why I went down and found the autonomism aspect of it. I wanted to find out what that meant, and it said involuntary.
Yeah.
Now, intoxication is voluntary. Involuntary is autonomism. Mm-hmm. That's the legal definition. I was like, oh, never mind. Because I was going to sign the petition.
Oh, yeah.
Straight up. I came very close to signing it. Now I'm not, because I don't see the point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be in a situation where I mess up my medication when I'm 50 and I smack somebody as a result because I'm just whacked out and I get charged for assault. And I'm like, well, I wasn't in control. I feel bad for the other person. Like, as a moral person, I have to deal with that for the rest of my life. I have to remember the fact that I actually hit somebody and caused them pain.
Yep.
That's not something I ever want to do. An innocent person especially. So that's the thing that I want to avoid, right? So that's what it is. And then we get on to the next topic, which is the craziest topic. I was like, this is a thing? The drunk driving measures that were enacted, I believe, in 2018. Have you heard do you know about these?
Oh, yeah. I remember when this stuff was going around too. And there was a lot of backlash about this as well.
Yes. So apparently, here's the element of it that's contentious, in my opinion. Most of it is good, we'll say, about that long. There was apparently a situation where drunk drivers were saying that between the time that they were started drinking and the time that they were pulled over and given the breathalyzer, at that point in time, the blood had gone rushed into their system, and that is why they blew over.
Right.
That was the defense that was going on, apparently, in certain circumstances. I haven't really found any proof of this, which is the odd part, but that's what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So they came out with a law saying that if you're pulled over and you've had a lot of alcohol, and it's not, even if it's not in your bloodstream, and you later test and you literally blow high, then you can still be charged.
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's fine. But here's where it gets absolutely dumb. They can do this 2 hours after you've stopped driving.
Yes. Yep.
Anywhere.
Yep.
So if you're in your home, they can come into your home and say, blow into this. Oh, you're over. You're charged. Are you kidding me? How is this allowed? I go to a bar. I'm not the one driving, but I'm in the bar drinking. They say that I've been drinking for too long. I blow too high. All of a sudden, now I'm the one in trouble for it.
I honestly, I don't see how.
Couldn't believe it.
Oh, I know. And I don't see how, if any cases like that or someone being charged under that law goes to court, I don't see how it stands up. I don't see how it stands up constitutionally, because generally speaking, it has been that a person needs to be caught in the act by the police, or there needs to be witnesses that can corroborate the story. I remember when this came out, and yeah, it was kind of that same reaction. Like, I don't see how this law is ever going to be enacted and not be fought and won, or and that the person fighting it wins.
Yeah, I really don't know. It's not that I fear that somebody would ever be charged in it. It's the potential that is there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
that's too much overreach. It's too much overreach.
Well, there's no way that, like, the burden of proof is now on the defendant, not the prosecutor.
Right. Exactly.
I have to prove that I drank at home, not that you have to prove that I was drinking while driving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because there was.
Like,
I remember there was. I think there was a story around that time, or like after that law came out, I guess, where somebody, what was it? They had been out for lunch, and they'd had a drink with the person while they were out with for lunch with, and then I think they went home, and then if I remember correctly, someone else came to see them and picked them up, and they went to another bar. And this was like a few hours later or something like that. And then it was like while they were sitting on the patio, the cops came and did the breathalyzer and so on, and were able to charge them under that law, because I guess maybe was it someone in the neighborhood or something like that called the police. I can't remember the whole, like, again, it happened almost 2 years ago, so I don't remember all the details of it, but it was something like that. And it's like, in all the circumstances of the story, as it was reported, the woman that was charged didn't technically do anything wrong, but she was still able to be charged under this rule, under this law.
Yeah, and if you refuse a breathalyzer, then you're like, it's an auto, right? So you can't be like, I don't want to take the breathalyzer.
Well, that's basically an immediate. That's considered like an immediate admission of guilt, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's no point. Don't say no to the breathalyzer, because you might as well blow. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But apparently, a BC woman, like an 82-year-old woman, she couldn't blow hard enough to get the test right.
Mm-hmm.
So they charged her anyway. And then she went to the emergency room and said, "Hey, pull my blood to make sure that I don't actually have it in my blood." And that's how she got the conviction overturned, because she's like, "I don't have it. Like, I don't have enough volume of air in my mouth to blow the test. I'm not refusing the test. I just can't." So,
right. Yep.
That's your problem, not mine. So that's a situation, like, and like these laws are so overlapping. Like, I'm just like, wow, I would, and like, if you refuse a breathalyzer, like, you can be, that's the one that was like, I get why they're doing it. They're saying, well, no, if you refuse, then I get it. Another
problem that I did have with this particular law, and not directly pertaining to the law, it was more so, I guess it was more so how it was not implemented. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but anyways, government is big. Okay, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, and whether it's provincial, whether it's federal, government is big. Now, whether you're the prime minister or the premier, if you're the mayor of a town, that's a different story. You can have a lot more insight and probably control over certain things that are instituted. But I feel like in the position of a premier or a prime minister, you are not necessarily the be-all, end-all. The buck stops here with you, right? Because if that's the case, then that's basically a dictatorship.
Yeah,
right?
Unless you are a dictatorship, then more power to you.
Well, that's right, exactly. So my issue was that, it's the Justice Department. So they're the ones that are responsible for creating the laws, and then Parliament votes on it. But it was kind of it's as it always is, and it's this way with regardless of which party is in power. It's always blaming it on the prime minister, right? And that's what happened. It's like, oh, this is Justin Trudeau, and similar things happened when Stephen Harper was prime minister, and whichever prime minister. And it's like, you know what? You guys give the position of the prime minister too much credit, I guess. Like, people feel like every decision that the government makes is the prime minister is the one making the decision, and it's like that's not how our parliament works. That's not how our government works.
Okay, so there is some truth to that. Is not completely false. So the truth is that members will vote based on oftentimes what the prime minister wants.
Mm-hmm.
So the prime minister doesn't want a bill to go through. He can block it. And they're the only ones that can.
I suppose that's true. I mean, I guess they could also, they could tell like if it was going to go to a vote in the House of Commons, they could say, we're not voting for this, right? Like there are party whips and stuff like that, and that can happen. I get that.
Right. So that's where there's a grain of truth. Now, do I feel that your statement as overall whole is true? Yeah, they're usually not the ones making or proposing decisions. They're just the ones that kind of have a veto stamp on it.
Right.
That's what they do have. They have a veto stamp. However, I don't think that the prime minister should always be 100% perfectly knowledgeable on every single bill.
Right.
And from the standpoint of he should be able to rely on smarter people than him to reflect on whether or not this bill is a good idea or a bad idea based on accurate information, not based on somebody crying in their shoulders.
Well, that's right. And I mean, really, that's why you have departments in the government, and that's why you have ministers. And that's, if the prime minister or the premier of a province had to be the decision maker on every single decision that the government makes, nothing would get done. or very little would get done. Right?
They couldn't possibly. So that's the tricky part of it. And I want to say that like the prime minister shouldn't know about what bills and what they stand for, but I don't want them to be an expert. There are certain things I want them to be an expert on, but you have to wear so many hats. That's not one of the things that I can realistically expect of them.
Yeah.
Some people do, and it's like, you obviously have no idea what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I've said this for years. Like, I mean, I know the mayor in our town. And I remember when I talked to him like 2 years into his into being in office, and I said, "How is it?" He's like, "You know something? I thought it'd be a 50, 60-hour week job. It is 80 to 90 hours every week."
Yeah, and
I'm never off, and I'm always on. And I said, "Yeah, dude, I understand."
And I'm sure a lot of politicians are like that, but that's all as well. Where I would say that someone like the mayor of a town has more say in everything that's going on, as opposed to someone in a higher position with a higher and a larger level of government, right?
Yeah. As you increase the number of people voting, the amount of power you have is lessened severely, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But then again, your influence range is also less too. If they're proportional to each other.
Yeah.
Right. Like our mayor can't really influence what happens in St. John's.
No.
But our premier can. Our prime minister definitely does.
Well, yeah. Yes.
But yeah, getting back to the alcohol, I don't necessarily blame Justin Trudeau or anyone else for it. I point out where the law is broken, and this is where it's broken because it should never be. I can understand if you want to pull someone over and they're driving and they say, "Well, I'm not drunk yet."
Mm-hmm.
Really? Unless you live around the street corner, I agree that you should be able to do that. But once they're stopped, once they are out of the car, that's it.
Well, yeah, because they're not a danger anymore. No, I get if they get back in the car and go somewhere else, that's a different story.
100%.
But once they're not a danger anymore, then yeah, that should be it.
Yes, because you can't predict where people are going to go.
Right, and
now
I mean,
they might say they're not drunk right now, and it is true. Because you drink alcohol really fast, you don't feel the effects right away because it takes a little while to get metabolized into your bloodstream. And they can say, "Well, I wasn't drunk at the time you pulled me over," and that is true. You were not drunk at the time,
right?
But the burden of proof in that case, in my opinion, because I'm so against drunk driving, that's the thing where like if they're driving, yeah, 100%, let's close that loophole where they feel like, well, I wasn't drunk at the time. Bull crap. You might think that you're fine and you might have been able to get home, but I don't care. Just don't take the risk, right? Like, shut up. Let's close that loophole. Fine. Let's get rid of that loophole. But the other one, once you're out of the car, sorry, that's too bad. Okay, that's about all I have to talk about this stuff.
That's all you got to talk about for this stuff? All right.
Yeah.
So, alcohol rules. Yeah.
Alcohol laws.
Yeah, laws. Yeah, I guess laws, yeah.
The
alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. Anyways, alcohol laws. Alcohol laws. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike.
We'll talk to you soon.